I didn't know where else to turn. You can't just walk away from us.
I told you this would happen. This is your mess, not mine.
A tech mogul handed his unlimited credit card to a struggling single mother in a Lagos marketplace and simply walked away. 60 minutes later, a notification flashed on his phone. The purchase wasn't what he expected. Not food, not shelter, not even clothes for her child. It was something that stopped him cold. A decision so unexpected it would shatter everything he believed about human nature and force him to confront a truth that would change both their lives forever. Want to know what happens next? Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter of this incredible true story. 39-year-old Chike Okonkwo had long ago stopped believing people were fundamentally good. As founder and CEO of Next Tech Solutions, a software and telecommunications empire valued at 4.8 trillion Nigerian nairas, he'd watch people lie, steal, and betray for amounts of money that wouldn't even cover his monthly car payment. His sprawling estate in Ikoyi had gardens that stretched half a kilometer, imported Italian marble in every bathroom, and an art collection that could fund a small hospital. He owned properties in London, Dubai, and New York. His wristwatch cost more than what most Nigerians earn in 5 years. Yet every morning, Chike woke up feeling hollow. His late father, Chief Nnamdi Okonkwo, had drilled one lesson into him from childhood. Trust is what weak men rely on when they lack intelligence, my son. The poor are especially dangerous. Give them small opportunity, and they will drain you completely. They cannot help their nature. Poverty breeds dishonesty in everyone it touches. Chike had carried that teaching like armor for 39 years. Every charitable act filtered through corporate foundations and PR departments. Every donation calculated for maximum tax benefit and public perception. He'd never once looked poverty directly in the face and simply helped. Not without contracts, not without control, not without protecting himself first. But one humid afternoon in Victoria Island, something shifted. He was racing to an emergency investor meeting, his driver navigating through Lagos traffic while his assistant rattled off urgent messages. His custom-tailored Igbada had cost 800,000 Nigerian nairas. His leather portfolio held contracts worth billions. His phone buzzed constantly with messages from international investors, lawyers, and executives all demanding his attention. Then he saw her. Sitting outside the Palms shopping mall entrance was a woman, perhaps early 30s, with exhaustion carved into every feature. A small girl, maybe 7 years old, sat beside her on a faded wrapper, her thin arms wrapped around her mother's waist. The woman held a handwritten sign on cardboard. Single mother. Lost my job. Please help. God bless. Chike's driver slowed for the security checkpoint. Through the tinted window, Chike found himself staring. Sir, we're already 15 minutes late, his assistant reminded him from the front seat. Stop the car, Chike said. Sir, stop. Here. His assistant's eyes widened, but the driver obeyed. Chike stepped out into the sticky afternoon heat, immediately drawing stares. Men in Igbadas that expensive didn't typically walk through parking lots. They certainly didn't approach street beggars. But Chike's feet moved anyway, carrying him towards something he didn't understand but couldn't ignore. The woman saw him coming and immediately started to gather her daughter closer, preparing to move, to apologize for existing in his sightline. That defensive reflex, that automatic shame, hit Chike harder than any business loss ever had. Please, I'm not causing trouble, she said quickly, her Yoruba-accented English polish despite her circumstances. We can move somewhere else. Chike knelt down, ignoring his assistant's audible gasp behind him as his expensive clothes touched the dusty concrete. What's your name? He asked gently. The woman blinked, clearly shocked that someone dressed like him would speak to her at all, let alone with kindness. Kayamaka, she said softly. Kayamaka Nwosu. And this is my daughter, Zoe. The little girl peeked out from behind her mother, eyes wide and wary but still curious. How long have you been coming here? Chike asked, studying Kayamaka's face. Intelligence lived in her eyes despite the exhaustion. Education in her careful pronunciation. This wasn't someone born into poverty. This was someone who had fallen and couldn't find a way back up. Shame flickered across Kayamika's face. 6 months, she admitted. I lost my position as an administrative officer at a logistics company when they downsized. My landlord evicted us 3 months ago. We've been staying with different friends, but her voice trailed off, the unspoken words hanging heavy. But everyone's generosity has limits. Where do you sleep? Chike asked. Sometimes at the night shelter in Yaba, when they have space. Sometimes here, in the parking area, where security doesn't chase us away. Sometimes at the bus stop on Admiralty Way. She said it matter-of-factly, as if homelessness had become so normal she'd forgotten it was extraordinary. 6 months. A 7-year-old child sleeping in parking lots and bus stops for 6 months, while thousands of people walked past every single day. Behind him, Chike's assistant cleared her throat impatiently. Mr. Okonkwo, the investors from Singapore are waiting. This meeting is worth. Chike raised one hand, silencing her without breaking eye contact with Kayamika. His father's voice echoed in his head. The desperate will consume everything you give and still demand more. They cannot help themselves. It is their nature. Maybe it was time to test that theory himself, to prove once and for all whether his father had been right, or whether Chike had spent 39 years believing a lie that protected his wealth but poisoned his soul. Chike reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. Kayamika's eyes widened slightly, probably expecting a few thousand naira if she was lucky. Maybe 5,000 Nigerian nairas. Maybe 10,000 Nigerian nairas if the universe felt generous. Instead, Chike pulled out a sleek black credit card. Platinum edges. Embossed numbers. No spending limit. No restrictions. Just pure, unrestricted access to wealth most people couldn't imagine. Kayamika stared at it like he'd pulled out a snake. Take it, Chike said, holding the card between them. I don't understand, Kayamika stammered, pulling Zoe closer protectively. It's yours for 24 hours, Chike explained, his voice steady despite the chaos of doubt screaming in his head. Buy whatever you need. No limits. No questions. No conditions. Kayamika's hands began trembling. Sir, this must be some kind of test. Some kind of trap. People like you don't give people like me access to everything. I want to see something, Chike said. And for the first time in years, he spoke complete truth. I want to see what someone with nothing does when given everything. I want to test something my father taught me about human nature. Prove him right or prove him wrong. He pressed the card into her palm. Her fingers were rough from work and weather, shaking like leaves in Harmattan wind. Why me? Kayamika whispered, tears gathering in eyes that looked like they'd cried themselves dry months ago. Chike looked at Zoe, her thin arms wrapped around her mother, her school uniform faded and too small. He thought about his own childhood, drivers in private schools and summers in America. Every need met before he could even name it. This child had nothing except a mother who refused to let go. Because I'm tired of assumptions, Chike said quietly. Because I want to believe there's still something good left in people who've lost everything. Prove my father right or prove him wrong. Either way, I'll finally know the truth. Kayamika closed her fingers around the card slowly, like someone touching fire for the first time. 24 hours, Chike repeated, standing up. Spend whatever you want. No pin needed. Just sign your name. I'll find you here tomorrow evening. Same time, same place. His assistant looked physically ill. Mr. Okonkwo, this is completely irregular. We should establish parameters. Legal protections. No parameters, Chike said firmly, his eyes still on Kayamika. No protection. Just trust. The word felt foreign in his mouth. Trust. He'd spent decades avoiding it like a disease. Chike didn't attend the investor meeting. His assistant rescheduled, making excuses about a family emergency, while Chike sat alone in his office overlooking Victoria Island, staring at his phone. The card was linked to his personal account. He could track every transaction in real time, every purchase, every location, every choice Kayamika made. For hours, nothing. 6 p.m. came and went. 7, 8, 9, still nothing. Why wasn't she spending? Was she afraid? Did she think it was a trap? Or worse, was she planning something bigger? Waiting to maximize every naira? At 10:47 p.m., his phone buzzed. Transaction. 8,500 Nigerian nairas. Location, ShopRite, Ikeja City Mall. Chike's pulse spiked. He clicked for details, but the banking app only showed the amount and location. Not what was purchased, just numbers. Then another notification. Transaction, 15,200 Nigerian nairas. Location, Mr. Price, same mall. Then another, 6,800 Nigerian nairas. Food court. His chest tightened, not with anger but with something stranger. Anticipation. She was spending, yes, but carefully. These weren't the transactions of someone drunk on sudden wealth. These were the purchases of someone desperately practical. By midnight, Chike couldn't sleep. He paced his bedroom, the space suddenly feeling too large, too empty, too cold despite the air conditioning. His penthouse had cost 850 million Nigerian nairas. 6 bedrooms for one person. Bathrooms with imported fixtures. Views that real estate agents called priceless. But what did any of it mean if it couldn't answer the simple question burning in his chest? What is Kayamika buying? At 2:14 a.m., another transaction. 45,000 Nigerian nairas. Pharmacy, 24-hour location in Surulere. At 4:33 a.m., 12,000 Nigerian nairas. Another pharmacy. At 6:05 a.m., 25,000 Nigerian nairas. Small hotel, budget chain. Chike sat up in bed, his heart racing. A hotel. She'd gotten a hotel room. Of course she had. She'd been sleeping in parking lots. This was probably the first real bed she'd had in months. But something about the pattern of spending nagged at him. The amounts were modest, purposeful. These weren't the choices of someone taking advantage. These were the choices of someone solving problems. By 7 a.m., Chike gave up on sleep entirely. He called his driver. Cancel everything today, he told his assistant when she called, panicked about the day's schedule. Mr. Okonkwo, you have meetings with the central bank that cancel it all. Reschedule. I don't care how. Just handle it. He dressed quickly in casual clothes, designer jeans, and a simple shirt, and had his driver take him to Victoria Island. But several blocks from the Palms, he told the driver to stop. He needed to walk, needed to feel the morning heat building, needed to remember what the city actually felt like when you weren't insulated by wealth and tinted windows. When he reached the mall entrance where he'd found Kayamika yesterday, she was there, but everything had changed. Zoe sat on a clean wrapper now, wearing a brand new school uniform. The actual uniform from her school, not the faded hand-me-down from yesterday. Her hair had been freshly braided with colorful beads at the ends. She clutched a new doll, hugging it while working through a mathematics workbook with a pencil that still had an eraser. Kayamika saw Chike approaching and immediately stood, the credit card already in her trembling hand extended toward him. I was going to return it this morning, she said quickly, panic in her voice. I promise. I just needed to handle a few urgent things first. Keep it, Chike said gently, raising both hands. You still have hours left. The 24 hours isn't up until this evening. Kayamika's shoulders sagged with something between relief and confusion. I don't understand you at all. That makes 2 of us, Chike admitted, looking at Zoe. She was watching him with the same wide, cautious eyes as yesterday, but there was something different, a small smile. You bought her a uniform, Chike observed. She hasn't been able to attend school for 3 months, Kayamika said simply, as if that explained everything. And perhaps it did. Perhaps that was the only explanation that mattered. The school kept sending messages, threatening to withdraw her completely. She needs education. That's the one thing I can't let her lose. Chike knelt down to Zoe's level, careful not to startle her. That's a nice doll. What's her name? Zoe hugged the toy tighter, still shy but warming up. Princess, she whispered. That's a perfect name, Chike said softly, his throat tight. He looked up at Kayamika. What else did you buy? Kayamika hesitated, then slowly pulled several crumpled receipts from her bag and handed them over like evidence she was certain would condemn her. Chike scanned the first receipt from ShopRite. Children's underwear, 7-pack children's socks, 5-pack. School shoes size 32, sanitary pads, bar soap, 3-pack toothpaste, toothbrushes, children's multivitamins, first aid kit. His throat tightened. Every single item practical. Necessary. Nothing frivolous. The second receipt from Mr. Price showed similar restraint. School uniform, 2 sets, school bag, water bottle, lunchbox, children's doll, mathematics workbook, grade 2 reading books, 3. The pharmacy receipt listed medications, children's pain reliever, deworming tablets, anti-malaria drugs, vitamin supplements. But it was the final receipt that made Chaik's breath catch. From the budget hotel. Room for one night. 25,000 Nigerian Nairas additional donation to hotel's community fund. 20,000 Nigerian Nairas. He looked up sharply. You donated money? To the hotel. Kayamika's cheeks flushed. They have a fund. For people who can't afford rooms. People worse off than us. The woman at reception explained it when I checked in. I thought, if I had extra, even just for one day, maybe I could help someone else have one safe night too. Chaik stared at the receipts, his hands trembling slightly. His father's voice was completely silent now, obliterated by the truth printed on thermal paper. This woman, who had every reason to be selfish, who had every justification to think only of herself and her daughter, had spent a billionaire's unlimited credit card on necessities, education, and charity. Not jewelry, not designer clothes, not electronics or luxuries or anything remotely self-indulgent. Just survival, just kindness, just love. You didn't buy anything for yourself, Chaik said, his voice strained. Not a single thing. Kayamika shook her head. Zoe comes first. She always comes first. I can manage with what I have. I've managed this long. But she deserves better. She deserves to be in school, to have clean clothes, to be a child, not someone worried about where we'll sleep. Chaik looked at Zoe, carefully practicing her letters in the workbook, Princess the doll sitting watch beside her. A child who'd spent 7 years learning that the world was harsh and unstable, but who still smiled, still studied, still hoped. For the first time in his life, Chaik Okonkwo felt genuinely small. Not in wealth, he still had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. But in character, in humanity, in basic human decency. This homeless single mother had more grace in her work-roughened hands than he'd cultivated in 39 years of privilege in private schools and executive boardrooms. Come with me, he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before his brain could catch up. Kayamika blinked. What? Both of you? Come with me. Please. Fear flickered in her eyes. Where? Somewhere safe, Chaik said, his voice breaking slightly. Somewhere with walls and doors that lock. Somewhere you can finally stop running and looking over your shoulder. Somewhere Zoe can just be 7 years old. Tears spilled down Kayamika's cheeks. She looked at her daughter, then at this man kneeling before them in expensive jeans, and for the first time in 6 months, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in the world was cruel or indifferent. I don't have anything to give you in return, she whispered. You already gave me everything, Chaik replied, his voice rough with emotion. You reminded me what money is actually for. You showed me my father was wrong about everything that truly matters. You proved that goodness still exists. Kayamika wiped her eyes, laughing through tears. I just bought what my daughter needed. Exactly, Chaik said. You had unlimited wealth for 24 hours, and you chose love over greed. Do you know how rare that is? How many people would have bought cars, electronics, designer clothes, emptied the account, and disappeared? Kayamika looked at Zoe, who was watching them both with curious eyes. She's all I have. She's all that matters. Every choice I make, every day I survive, it's all for her. I know, Chaik said softly. I saw it in those receipts. I saw it in that donation. You could have taken everything, but you gave anyway. That's not just good. That's extraordinary. He stood up, extending his hand to help Kayamika to her feet. Let me help you build something stable. Not charity, a foundation. A real chance. Will you let me do that? Kayamika took his hand, and as she stood, she felt something she hadn't felt in 6 months. Hope that wasn't fragile, but solid. Chaik took them to Eco Hotel first, not his personal estate, which felt too invasive, too overwhelming. Instead, he booked a 2-bedroom suite overlooking the Atlantic with a full kitchen, a living area, and windows that framed the ocean instead of parking lot concrete. Kayamika stood in the doorway, frozen, unable to cross the threshold into a space that felt like it belonged to a different universe. "It's okay," Chike said gently. "This is yours, for as long as you need it. No expectations, no conditions, just safety and time to breathe." Zoe, unburdened by adult disbelief and trauma, walked inside immediately, her new school shoes squeaking on polished tile. She touched everything with wonder: the velvet couch, the heavy curtains, the bowl of fresh fruit on the counter. "Mama, look," Zoe called, pointing at the bathroom. "There's a bathtub, a big one, with bubbles." Kayamika finally stepped inside, moving like someone walking through a dream that might shatter. She set down the plastic bag that held everything she owned, literally everything that remained of her previous life, and turned to Chike with tears streaming freely. "I don't understand," she whispered, voice fracturing. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from us? People don't just help like this. There's always something they want in return." Chike had been asked variations of this question thousands of times in business. People always wanted to know his angle, his strategy, his hidden agenda. But standing there, watching a mother see safety for the first time in half a year, he realized he didn't have an agenda. He just had a choice. "You reminded me what wealth is actually for," he said quietly. "I'd forgotten, or maybe I never really knew. My father taught me that money was for protection, for power, for building walls between myself and people who might want something from me. But you showed me it's for building bridges instead, for creating possibilities, for giving people a chance to show who they really are." Kayamika walked over to where Zoe was discovering the TV remote, delighted by every channel. She knelt and wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her in a way she'd been afraid to before, as if hope itself might break if she squeezed too tight. "You need to rest," Chike said, his voice thick with emotion. "Order room service, anything you want. Take a real bath. Sleep in an actual bed. Tomorrow morning, I'll come back and we'll figure out the next steps together." "Next steps?" Kayamika asked, confusion and fear mixing in her expression. "Housing, employment, proper school enrollment for Zoe, healthcare, childcare support, stability." Chike listed them systematically because that's what his brain did. It solved problems with structure and planning. None of this has to be temporary unless you want it to be. Kayamika stared at him like he'd spoken a language she'd forgotten existed. "You're serious. You're actually serious. Completely. You're intelligent, educated, capable. You just need a stable foundation to rebuild from. A place to stand so you can start climbing again." "We're strangers," Kayamika said. "We're nobody. We're just two people who got unlucky." "You were strangers yesterday," Chai corrected gently. "Today you're someone I care about. Today you matter. Today you have someone who won't let you fall again." That night, Chike made phone calls, not to lawyers or PR teams or financial advisors, but to people who actually help people. Social workers, housing advocates, job placement specialists, education coordinators. He used his name not as a weapon or a flex, but as a key to open doors that had been slammed in Kayamika's face for 6 months. By morning, he had options. Real, tangible, sustainable options. He returned to the hotel at 9 a.m. carrying coffee and a bag of chin-chin and puff-puff from a nearby bakery. When Kayamika opened the door, she looked transformed. Not in appearance. She still wore simple clothes, but in posture. In the way she stood straighter, how her eyes held something other than perpetual fear. Zoe was watching cartoons on a massive TV, Princess the doll sitting proudly beside her on the couch. "Morning," Chike said, handing Kayamika the coffee. She took it with both hands, inhaling the steam like a memory she'd thought was permanently lost. "Real coffee," she said softly, "from an actual coffee shop, not the instant sachets from roadside vendors." I'd forgotten what this was like. They sat together while Zoe laughed at cartoons, and Chike laid out the plan he'd constructed overnight. A 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood near good schools. Rent subsidized initially through a housing assistance program he'd pressured into accepting her application. Job training matched to her skills and experience. Healthcare coverage through a program for single mothers. Zoe enrolled in a good primary school with subsidized fees and meals included. Kayamika listened in stunned silence, tears running down her face, dripping in a coffee that had grown cold while Chaik talked through every detail. This isn't charity, Chaik clarified, repeating what he'd been telling himself all night. It's an investment. You're intelligent, capable, and resilient. You just need resources and stability. A foundation to build from. Everything else, you'll do yourself. I don't know how to repay you, Kayamika said, her voice barely audible. This is more than money. This is my whole life. My daughter's future. How does someone repay that? You already did, Chaik replied. You show me that goodness still exists in people. That desperation doesn't automatically create thieves and liars. That my father was wrong about everything that actually matters. That's worth more than any amount of money. Kayamika shook her head, more tears falling. I just bought what Zoe needed. Basic things. Necessary things. Exactly, Chaik said. You had unlimited access to wealth for 24 hours, and you chose necessity over luxury, love over greed, others over yourself. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I've known billionaires who wouldn't donate 20 naira if it wouldn't get them a tax deduction or a photo opportunity. Kayamika looked at Zoe, safely watching cartoons, her belly full of hotel breakfast, her body clean from a real bath. She's all I have. She's all that matters. Every decision I make, every breath I take, it's all for her. I know, Chaik said softly. I saw it in those receipts. I saw it in that hotel donation. You could have taken everything, but you still found a way to give. That's not just good, that's exceptional. That's the kind of person I want to help succeed because I know you'll use that success to help others in turn. 3 weeks later, Kayamika and Zoe moved into their new apartment. 2 bedrooms on the second floor of a modest but clean building in Bagada, with a small common area where children played in the evenings. It wasn't luxury, laminate floors, basic appliances, simple furniture, but it was theirs. Walls that stayed in place. A door with locks that worked. Windows with screens and curtains. Electricity that ran most hours of the day. Chaik helped them move in, carrying boxes, assembling flat-pack furniture, laughing when Zoe insisted on supervising by placing Princess on every surface and declaring it properly decorated. She's very particular about interior design, Kayamika joked, watching her daughter arrange her small collection of belongings with the seriousness of an architect. Chaik didn't mind the physical labor. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely useful. Not powerful or influential or wealthy, just useful, just present, just human. That evening, after Zoe fell asleep in her new bed, her very first bed that wasn't borrowed or temporary, Kayamika and Chaik stood in the small living room, exhaustion and gratitude hanging thick in the air between them. I start the administrative training program on Monday, Kayamika said. Office management with technology skills. The placement specialist said there's strong demand, good salaries, benefits. A real career path, not just a job. You're going to excel at it, Chaik said, and he meant it. He'd seen her intelligence, her attention to detail, her determination. She would succeed because she had to, because Zoe depended on her, because that's what survivors did. Kayamika looked around the apartment, her eyes glistening in the lamplight. I keep expecting to wake up back at the Palms entrance, to realize this was all some elaborate dream I had while Zoe and I were sleeping on concrete. It's real, Chaik assured her. It's yours. No one can take it away. The lease is in your name. The training program is confirmed. Zoe's school enrollment is complete. This is your foundation now. Everything you build from here is yours. She turned to face him, her voice breaking around the edges. Why did you choose us? Out of everyone in Lagos who's struggling, why me and Zoe? Chaik had thought about that question every day since that afternoon at the mall. He'd analyzed it, broken it down, tried to make logical sense of it. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than logic. Because you looked at Zoe the way my mother used to look at me, he said quietly. Before she died, before my father became cold and turned wealth into a wall instead of a tool. You looked at your daughter like nothing else in the world existed, like you'd fight the universe itself to keep her safe. And I realized I'd spent 39 years believing people like you didn't exist anymore. That poverty destroyed goodness. Though my father was right to trust no one. Kayamika wiped her eyes. You gave us a future we couldn't reach on our own. No, Chike said firmly. You already had the future inside you. The strength, the love, the resilience. I just removed some of the obstacles blocking your path. You did the hard part. You survived 6 months that would have broken most people. You kept Zoe safe and hopeful. You stayed good when the world gave you every reason to become bitter. That's all you. I just opened a few doors. Months passed. Kayamika completed her training program at the top of her class and landed a position at a tech startup in Yaba. Good salary, full benefits, room for advancement. Zoe thrived in school, bringing home report cards filled with excellent grades, making friends, no longer carrying the invisible weight of homelessness in her small shoulders. Chike visited regularly, not as a benefactor checking on an investment, but as a friend, someone who attended Zoe's school assembly, where she received an award for mathematics. Someone who helped Kayamika figure out how to fix a leaking tap. Someone who showed up on difficult days without being asked. He learned things about himself he'd never known. That he preferred home-cooked jollof rice to 5-star restaurant meals. That a child's proud smile was better than any board meeting standing ovation. That watching someone rebuild their life was more satisfying than watching his company's stock price climb. But something else was changing too. The story of what Chike had done, though he tried to keep it private, had leaked somehow. Maybe through the hotel staff. Maybe through the social workers. Maybe through Kayamika mentioning it gratefully to someone at her new job. People started reaching out. Other tech entrepreneurs, business leaders, wealthy Nigerians who'd grown cynical about helping. They all asked the same thing. How do we know who to trust? How do we help without enabling? How do we give without being taken advantage of? Chike's answer was always the same. You don't know. You trust anyway. You help because it's right, not because you're guaranteed a good outcome. And most importantly, you treat people like people, not like problems to be solved or charity cases to manage. He started something new, not a foundation. Those felt too institutional, too distant. Instead, he created a simple program, 24 hours of trust. He recruited other wealthy individuals. The concept was simple. They would identify people genuinely struggling, give them access to resources for one day, and see what they did with it. No applications, no means testing, no bureaucracy, just human connection and trust. Some people spent the money selfishly, and that was okay. They were learning what was possible, dreaming bigger than survival for the first time. But most people, Chike discovered, were like Kayamika. Given a chance, they chose necessity over luxury, family over self, future over immediate gratification. His father's cynicism had been wrong. Not completely. There were indeed people who would take advantage. But they were the minority, not the majority. Most people, given genuine help without judgment, wanted to build something better. They wanted to work, to provide, to give back. One evening, Kayamika invited Chike for dinner at her apartment. Simple food, jollof rice, fried plantain, chicken, but cooked with care. Zoe chattered excitedly about her school day, showing him her latest drawings, completely comfortable now with this man who'd changed their lives. After Zoe went to bed, Kayamika handed Chike something. His credit card. I've been keeping it, she admitted, blushing. I know I should have returned it months ago, but I was scared. Scared that returning it would somehow break the spell. That as long as I held on to it, this new life would stay real. Chike smiled, closing her fingers back around the card. Keep it. Chike, I can't possibly. Emergency fund, he said simply. For Zoe. For unexpected expenses. For peace of mind. You've proven exactly what you do with it. You've proven I can trust you more than I trust most people I've known for decades. A year after that afternoon at the Palm shopping mall, Chike stood at his office window overlooking Lagos, but his view had changed. Not the physical view. The same sprawling city stretched before him. But what he saw when he looked at it, he no longer saw just opportunities for profit or threats to manage. He saw people, millions of people, each carrying their own struggles, their own stories, their own potential for goodness if given the chance. His company had changed too. Nextech Solutions launched a new initiative, subsidized technology training for unemployed professionals, paid internships for people rebuilding after setbacks, partnerships with shelters and social services to identify talented people who just needed opportunity. Some board members complained about the costs. Some investors questioned the strategy, but the results spoke for themselves. The program had placed over 300 people in stable jobs. Dozens had been promoted. Several had started their own businesses. And the publicity, genuine, earned publicity, had attracted top talent and conscious consumers. Doing good was also good business. His father had never understood that. Kayamika had been promoted twice. She was now managing a team of 5 at her company, making enough to save money each month, building something lasting for Zoe's future. She'd started volunteering at the night shelter, helping other single mothers navigate the system, offering the same hope she'd been given. Zoe was 8 now, confident and bright, with dreams of becoming a doctor. She had friends, hobbies, stability, a childhood. Chaik's phone rang. Kayamika's name on the screen. Chaik, do you have a moment? There's something I need to tell you. They met at a cafe near her office. Kayamika looked nervous, fidgeting with her coffee cup. What's wrong? Chaik asked, concerned. Nothing's wrong. Everything is incredibly right. That's why I need to tell you this. She took a deep breath. When you gave me that credit card, do you know what my first thought was? That I was crazy? She laughed softly. That too. But my very first thought was, this is a test. A trap. He's seeing if I'll steal from him so he can feel superior. So he can confirm that poor people are exactly what he thinks we are. Chaik's chest tightened. And now I understand you weren't testing me at all. You were testing yourself. Testing whether you could trust. Testing whether your father's teaching was true. Testing whether you'd been living a lie that protected your wallet but poisoned your soul. She reached across the table and took his hand. You changed my life, yes. But Chaik, I think I changed yours too. And I need you to know, what you did that day wasn't just generosity. It was bravery. It takes courage to let go of the beliefs you were raised with. To risk being hurt or taken advantage of. To choose trust when you've been taught that trust is weakness. Tears burned in Chaik's eyes. You showed me what was possible. What goodness looks like even after everything has been taken away. And you showed me that not everyone with wealth is heartless. That some people still see other humans, not just problems or opportunities or threats. They sat in comfortable silence. 2 people whose lives had intersected at exactly the right moment, when both needed to be reminded that goodness still existed in the world. Thank you, Kayamika finally said. Not just for the help, for seeing me, for treating me like I mattered, even when I was sitting on a concrete floor begging strangers for coins. Thank you, Chaik replied, his voice rough with emotion. For proving my father wrong. For showing me what money is actually for. For reminding me that trust isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing we can offer each other. Later that evening, Chaik visited his father's grave for the first time in 3 years. He stood before the marble headstone, expensive and imposing like everything his father had valued. You were wrong, Dad, he said quietly to the stone. Not about everything. The business lessons were sound. The strategy, the planning, the discipline, all useful. But about people? About trust? About poverty and goodness? You were completely wrong. The poor aren't dangerous because they're desperate. They're desperate because people like us hoarded everything and convinced ourselves we earned it all alone. Kayamika taught me that. She had nothing and still found ways to give. She was drowning and still reached out to help others. I spent 39 years living by your rules, and I was miserable, wealthy but hollow, powerful but empty. One woman with a 7-year-old daughter changed all of that in 24 hours, not by taking everything, but by showing me what love looks like when it's the only thing you have left. The wind rustled through trees planted around the cemetery. Expensive landscaping, of course. His father had insisted on the best plot. I forgive you for being wrong, Chaik said. I forgive you for teaching me fear instead of trust. Because if you'd been right, I would have spent my whole life living in a cage made of gold. Kayamika set me free. He walked away from the grave, feeling lighter than he had in years. The truth his father never understood was simple. Wealth means nothing if it walls you off from humanity. Real richness isn't measured in billions or properties or power. It's measured in connections, in trust given and received, in the courage to believe in goodness, even when the world has given you every reason not to. Kayamika had been poor in money, but rich in character. And she'd made Chaik rich in the only way that actually mattered, rich in understanding what it means to be human. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss inspiring true stories like this. Leave a comment below telling us what you would do if you were given unlimited resources for 24 hours. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Remember, trust is not weakness. Goodness still exists. And sometimes, the poorest person in the room can teach the richest person what wealth really means. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.